In lieu of another entry-level tarot video, of which on YouTube there are ample supply, this micro-lecture will introduce topics in the cartomantic divinatory technique known as tarot, which delves a little deeper and hopefully will provide value and insight supplementary to any tarot practice. I'm Ike Baker, and this is Arcanvm. While an in-depth exploration of the Hermetic Tarot could indeed fill an entire series of videos, this particular episode will focus on orienting the practitioner to the basic concepts of the Hermetic Tarot as distinct from other forms of its usage, and includes some practical techniques for divination. Now, there's a lot of talk about the tarot originating in ancient Egypt, but let's clear a few things up first. The oldest cards, which are related to the tarot on the historical record, are a collection of 15 decks known as the Visconti-Sforza tarot. These cards date from no earlier than the 15th century and are a kind of Proto-Tarot. In their day, they were known as a game called Triumphi, Triumph. This is the etymological origin of the word trumps. In the well-known Tarot of Marseille, we find the schema of the 22 trumps, 16 court cards, and 40 number cards fully fleshed out. And until about the 18th century, these decks were thought to be no more than playing cards. It was then in the late 1700s that a French former pastor named Antoine Caude de Gébelin, in the heart of the French occult revival, published a series of volumes entitled Le Monde Primitif, the Primitive World. It was in an essay in the second volume of this work that the idea was set forth that the tarot cards were not merely a game, but an ancient book, a book of pictures relaying ancient wisdom from the priest class of pharaonic Egypt. The essay referred to the major arcana, which are the 22 trump cards of the tarot, as the Book of Thoth, Thoth being the ancient Egyptian god of writing and broadly the arts and sciences. Gébelin based this on an intuition rather than any shred of actual evidence. However, perhaps most notably, Gébelin did correspond the 22 trumps of the tarot to the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. Not long after this publication, another Frenchman named Jean-Baptiste Alliette, writing under the pen name of Etelia, his last name backwards, wrote a treatise on transformation via the tarot cards. In the main, the ideas in these works were seized upon by fringe Masonic groups, such as the highly influential Society of Eight. The Society of Eight was a private, secret group of 8 Masons within the appendant body of the SRIA, the Societas Rosicruciana in Anglia, or the Rosicrucian Society in England. This small group of fringe Masons most notably included Kenneth Mackenzie and William Wynne Westcott, who would go on to be one of the 3 founding members of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn in 1880s London. This makes the Society of Eight historically significant in that it most definitely served as a precursor to Westcott's Golden Dawn endeavors. The work of the Society included creating their own tarot images with correspondences to the Hebrew alphabet and marginalia containing vignettes of the cards and their esoteric significance. These historical documents from the private papers of Wynne Westcott are now in a private collection. I have seen them. Westcott, a devout student of the Kabbalah, was instrumental in excising Qabalistic exegetical techniques from strictly scriptural analysis. The early work of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn broadened its scope, applying it to texts outside strictly Judeo-Christian paradigms, also applying it to techniques of divination, including and perhaps most significantly the tarot. This was effectively the beginning of the Hermetic Tarot, given to us by the earliest members and founders of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, a system which many practitioners use to this day. It arguably reached its culmination in the works of Arthur Edward Waite in his Rider-Waite Tarot, with illustrations by Pamela Coleman Smith, and also in the works of Paul Foster Case. So let's examine the Kabbalistic framework for the Hermetic Tarot. The Tarot on the Tree of Life. The Kabbalistic diagram, known as the Tree of Life, is composed of a series of spheres and lines, also called paths. These are the Sephiroth and the Navitoth, respectively. We've covered these in detail in Episode 7, Introduction to the Magical Kabbalah, Parts 1 and 2. In the Hermetic Tarot, the 22 trumps of the major arcana are assigned to the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, and their respective meanings and numerical values. Further, each are assigned to a path on the Tree of Life. Contemplation of these assignments will serve to further strengthen and elaborate the holistic symbolism of the tree, and illustrate how the forces which it symbolizes interact. In a way, the trumps of the major arcana are archetypal images, which symbolize the interaction and exchange of forces. In the psyche, they represent states of transmutation and permutation, oftentimes liminal and initiatic experiences. In human life, they represent greater karmic forces at work, which shape and mold the trajectory of a person's individual life. On the paths of the Tree of Life, they are active, typically associated with a color scale, first assembled and worked by the early initiates of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. This color scale, specifically for the paths, is known as the King Scale of Color. These are active, dynamic states of being which signify experience at their core. The paths connect the passive or receptive elements of the tree, the Sephiroth, which are static fullness, similar to massive stores of potential energy rather than kinetic energy. The paths connect the Sephiroth and therefore signify a blending of the energies of the Sephiroth connected. In the technique known as pathworking, the initiate traverses these paths of experience, using the trumps of the tarot as sharim, or doorways, through which to enter into the inherent energies of the cards and paths. They are astral doorways to a particular portion of the organized glyph of the Tree of Life. And significantly, by extension, the universe. The trumps, assigned to the letters of the Hebrew alphabet, are organized based on the scheme of the Sefer Yetzirah, also covered in Episode 7. There are 3 mother letters, 7 double letters, and 12 simple letters. These correspond to 3 elements, 7 classical planets, and 12 zodiacal energies or signs. Here, a brief caveat: we will, for the duration of our studies, primarily be utilizing the 7 classic or traditional visible planets in the vast majority of our Hermetic, Kabbalistic, and Neoplatonic workings and researches. The court or face cards are assigned to the fourfold division of the universe and of the microcosm in the 4 worlds. Further, the entirety of the minor arcana, which are the court cards and the number cards, are also grouped and placed onto the tree in the Sephiroth as follows. Sephiroth means number or enumeration, and so the number cards are grouped according to their various successive emanative numerations. The number cards, excluding the aces, are further subdivided into the Decans of the zodiac. The Decans are a specific division of the 360 degrees of the ecliptic, the apparent path of the sun in the sky, from our georeferential perspective. This path of the sun forms the zodiacal belt. In tropical astrology, we consider the ecliptic itself the important thing. The zodiacal energies occupy a portion of the ecliptic rather than in sidereal astrology, where the position of the actual constellations, these having moved throughout time, is adhered to. The 360 degrees of this belt are divided into 12 signs, which also represent the astrological houses. The houses are 30-degree segments of the 360 degrees of the zodiacal belt. These are then further divided into 3 10-degree segments, giving a total of 36 segments of 10 degrees. These are the Decans, Deca meaning 10 in Greek. So each house contains 3 Decans. The Decan system dates back to ancient Egypt in the historical record. It can even be seen on the famous Greco-Egyptian Dendera zodiac dated to the 1st century of the Common Era. A different planet rules each decan and is represented by a number card of the minor arcana, namely 2 through 10. Therefore, the 36 number cards, excluding aces, represent the classical planets as positioned in different signs of the zodiac. These energetic permutations give a potent insight into the signification of the symbolism of these minor arcana cards. For those unfamiliar with basic astrology, rest assured there will be a lecture series on this in the future. Finally, the decans are further divided into 6 divisions of 5 degrees, forming the Quinances of the zodiac. These form a total of 72 divisions of the circle. These Quinances correspond to the 72-fold name of God in the Kabbalah, known as the Shem HaMephorasch, or the name of brilliant fire. The Shem HaMephorasch is derived from the Book of Exodus in the Hebrew Torah. The names are formed by taking 3 specific verses from Exodus and writing them sequentially, one above the other. The first verse is written right to left, the second verse from left to right, and the third from right to left again. These create a series of trigrams or vertical columns of 3 letters. Together, these 216 letters form 72 divine names, which constitute the Shem HaMephorasch. To these divine names are added the suffix Yod-He, Ya or Ye, or the suffix Aleph Lamed or El, creating 72 names of angels. The meanings of these names are sourced from the Book of Psalms, wherever the tetragrammaton or 4-lettered name of God, Yod-He-Vav-He, appears. Now, why this is significant is because it effectively makes the cards of the tarot angelic talismans, suitable for evocation and invocation in ritual, meditative, astral, or any other kind of work one might need to invoke or evoke angelic power in. There is a specific ritual that invokes all of these angels. It is called, in short, the Shem operation. Before we start examining some practical methods, let's briefly recap some fundamental theory of divination, which is covered in greater detail in episode 5, What is Divination, and in Minor Arcana series number 2, What are Symbols? All these symbolic attributions are meant to serve as an interpretive framework or scaffolding for the Qabalistic Hermetic Practitioner. These are not in all cases necessary, say as in someone who prefers to rely strictly on what feels right to them. The important thing is to form a relationship with the cards, and whatever attributions or meanings are assigned, remain consistent with those. The symbol systems of the Hermetic Tarot, however, can draw interpretations on multiple levels with a significant degree of specificity, creating a nuanced tapestry of relationship and meaning. Now that is if the practitioner has acquired and assimilated these symbol systems of the Kabbalah and astrology as well as the tarot, and having arrived at an understanding of the energies which they mean to symbolize, to the extent that the various symbola have become for them an interior vocabulary of images, the working tools of the mind of the magician. The virtue of using the Hermetic Tarot is that there are inherent errors in utilizing one aspect of the individual's psycho-spiritual organization to the exclusion of others, such as delusion, distraction, bias, and overanalysis. The Hermetic Tarot exercises all of these in a balanced disposition, giving engagement to the intellect, stimulating the deep subconscious, allowing access to the individual unconscious, which is then our personal doorway to the collective unconscious, wherein dwell the archetypes. What is also important is that these images are meant to represent archetypes of human experience in its totality. Therefore, they should be preserved to a greater extent in terms of meaning and imagery. Otherwise, they become out of touch with the supra-rational aspect of an individual's psyche. All right, let's have a look at some spreads. As usual, I'll delineate a formula for ritualized divination, as this helps to clear the space and sphere of the practitioner, preparing them for the subtle interaction of the parts of their innermost self that must happen in order to divine, and to contact and invite into the reading the underlying intelligences of the various divinatory systems. For those of us that are longtime practitioners, it is evident that the cards, in fact each deck, has an underlying personality. Some are more direct and blunt. Others consistently call our attention to questions we hadn't thought to ask, but which are intrinsically related to the question at hand. Still others are more gentle and softer than some. The magical or hermetic view is that these cards are microcosms in themselves and interact with parts of our own psycho-spiritual microcosm in proportion to the energies or spirit inherent to their images in creation. However, underlying it all is a sort of living Platonic ideal of the tarot. In the Golden Dawn, we invite this overarching intelligence of the tarot to commune with and supervise the divination under the god form of the ancient Coptic god Heru, the Hellenized or Greco-Egyptian god Horus. A simple formula would be to perform a banishing or warding rite in your ritual space with your tarot deck of choice on your altar, perhaps 2 or 3 small candles lit atop the altar as well. Then perform an invoking rite, such as the lesser invoking ritual of the pentagram. When ready, call in the god form of Heru by an invocation such as, "Great Archangel Heru, who is set in governance over these cards of art, place thine hand over these sacred images, that through this divinatory work the utmost truth may be revealed and perceived by me." At this point, picture in your mind's eye the falcon-headed Egyptian Horus standing before you, on the other side of the altar, twice your own height. See him reaching down to place his hand over the deck for a moment. When ready, proceed to divine in whatever way seems best to you. The operation completed, close down by thanking and dismissing the god form invoked. A basic formula is a license to depart, which I gave in episode 3, Getting Started in Ritual. Again, I would include a humble and reverent thanks as well. Now let's proceed to go over 3 spreads, 2 simple and 1 extremely complex. The first is a 4-card spread known as the Triangle of Art spread. I use the Golden Dawn Magical Tarot by Tabby Cicero for most workings. It's great because her imagery is very much in line with more esoteric imagery, and the extremely vibrant color palette she uses has the effect of really awakening my consciousness to the divination. It also has helpful notation regarding the Qabalistic, elemental, planetary, zodiacal, and decanate symbolism of the respective cards. The cards are laid out as follows. 4 cards are pulled and placed in a pile face down at the easternmost quarter of the altar. The individual cards are then pulled from this pile and placed face up in the following sequence. The first card is at the apex of what will be a triangle. The second at the bottom right, going clockwise. The third bottom left. And finally, the 4th card in the center of the triangle. Card 1 is the significator, or the person who is the subject of the divination. I'll make a note here that court cards are typically great indicators of actual physical persons. Take note of the specific attributes, both symbolically and in the imagery of the card itself. For instance, male, female, younger, older, the color of their hair, etc. You may want to leave it to quote-unquote chance and see if a court card lands in place of a significator, or you could select your own significator. I've had great success in separating out the court cards beforehand from the rest of the deck and divining for the question, show me me. In fact, court cards can be very good indicators of actual people generally anywhere in a reading, so keep that in mind. Card 2 is the initial action. What is/are the contributing factors to this question? Card 3 is the development of the matter. What energies will be the product of the initial action that either has been taken or can be taken. Card 4 in the center of the triangle is the resolution or outcome of the matter. It's important to make two side notes here. 1. The future is not static. The development of the matter is representative in my readings of what can be done to mitigate the matter, since the divinatory reading itself is altering potential outcomes by way of knowledge. Also, in the Golden Dawn system, we do not read cards upside down typically. If one is pulled upside down, we read it right side up. Now, this isn't to whitewash the reading and make everything positive, as that imposition of our feelings onto the reality of the situation is way out of balance. It's not the middle way to look at things. Rather, we assess meanings of the cards based on dignity, or the relation of that card to the cards which are most proximate to it, the cards around it. We essentially examine the card in question within the context or relationship of the cards surrounding it. That's the way the world works, isn't it? We assess the meanings of the cards based on this dignity. Other cards can augment or amplify or hinder a card's power. This tends to produce more nuanced, level-headed judgments, especially when beginning to read the tarot. There is one exception to this that will come when we cover the last of our tarot spreads. The next spread is the Pentagrammaton spread. The cards are shuffled, and from right to left, 4 cards are laid out in sequence. This tells the sequencing of the matter in question. The first card is, as usual, the significator of the actual person asking the question, or meant to represent the question itself. The second card is the initial action as it stands. What has happened to influence the matter? The third card represents any contributing elements, such as people or events that may come into play. The fourth card is the likely outcome. A fifth card is then pulled and placed between the first 2 and last 2 cards. This represents what we call the descent of spirit. What energies or actions can be utilized to mitigate this situation for the best or most positive outcome? If at the end of any of these readings the judgment is still hazy, you may ask for clarification by stating, "Clarify," and then pulling 1 or 2 more cards. I wouldn't push it, however. At a certain point, if you haven't come to at least a reasonable understanding of the picture at hand, it's probably because there's some resistance to it. These 2 simple tarot methods are excellent ways of getting a beginning practitioner started with simple divinatory interpretation, as well as the general symbolism of the cards, and how they interact with each other and you, the diviner. It's also a great method for long-time practitioners to attune themselves to particular decks. Cartomantic small talk, so to speak. An excellent preparatory exercise for beginners is also the tarot contemplation exercise or ritual given in Don Michael Craig's Modern Magic. Our final cartomantic layout is the sine qua non of the Golden Dawn tarot tradition, the opening of the key. This method was invented and developed by the founders and early initiates of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and is still in use today. It's based on the Qabalistic and Astrological systems which are grafted onto the symbolism of the cards. Yet here they are delineated as several phases of divining a single question. To really understand it, you've got to just see it as it is laid out. One note before we move on. I used the Rider-Waite tarot deck for this operation, and you'll see why in the next video, where I delineate tarot divination by this method. That's right, I gotcha. It's such a long and complex ritual that it ended up requiring its own video. I didn't make it up. Are there any decks or spreads that you found effective or that you just enjoy the most? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to my channel, and remember to turn on all notifications. Also, please consider contributing to the Arcanvm Patreon. For the cost of a cup of coffee per month, you can be privy to exclusive bonus videos, interviews, and tutorials, and it'll help me continue to produce more free content like this. Join me again in the next video, where we'll be diving deeper into the historical, theoretical, and practical sides of this and many other related topics. Thanks for watching. In Luke's.